Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Daily Fringe Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, and today I'm joined by Sara Gon. Sara, how are you doing?
Well, thanks. I'm just a bit confused. It feels like Monday.
Yeah, the public holiday kind of has scrambled everyone's brains a bit. And of course, we also have Mr. Terence Corrigan. Terence, how are you doing, sir?
Well, funny enough, I think it feels more like Friday, but it's not. So neither Sara nor I get what we want. Got to live with it.
Yeah. No, I also know what you mean. It's a very awkward day. But anyway, I do apologize to anyone watching on the YouTube. If I suddenly have to turn off my camera, it's because I've been plagued by nosebleeds the whole day. And so rather than to subject you to the gory mess, if it happens while we're recording, I will just switch off my camera. Anyway.
That'd be podcast gold, dude.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes, we get the Walking Dead fans.
Yeah, I don't know if we've got the cinematic expertise to record ourselves, to record me with like gore and all that. But anyway, let's get on to our first story today. And this is just one of those stories where, and it used to be a staple of this show, which is complaining about the National Youth Development Agency. Now, anyone who's familiar with this organization knows that it's not very well known for accomplishing things or spending money wisely. And man, oh man, is there a great story that has been leveled by the DA about the National Youth Development Agency. So there was a media statement put out by King Sol Chabalala, who is a member of the provincial legislature for the DA from Mfuleni North. And he says that he has received information that there was an RDP house constructed by the National Youth Development Agency for 2.6 million rand. So my figures may be a bit out of date, but I believe that that generally speaking, a RDP house, which is usually basically just one room and a toilet and a bathroom, like attached to it, usually gets built for about 50 or 60,000 rand. Maybe it's a little bit more these days, but that's how much at least it was at one point. And so not only has 2.6 million rand apparently been spent on this house, this was revealed by a question to the MEC for housing, who said that there was a memorandum of understanding between the Citybeng municipality and the National Youth Development Agency to construct this additional house, and it relates to a story, if you don't really get into the details of, where apparently a family said that there were too many people living in one house, and so they requested the Youth Development Agency to build another house for them. Anyway, that's also a bit odd, but the best part about the whole story is with the 2.6 million rand spent on this 50,000 rand house, it doesn't appear to have been finished. There are no tiles in some of in the rooms, and all of the walls have cracks. And basically, the thing looks like it's an unfinished, dilapidated mess. Oh, man. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things to look at in this story. But, Sara, let me start with you. This is kind of par for the course for the National Youth Development Agency, isn't it?
Well, it's a wonderful body. It's sort of... it exists out in, sort of in left field, and one doesn't hear about them very much. Until they're supposed to be doing all sorts of training and getting people jobs and dealing with the youth unemployment crisis, etc., etc. But they come to the fore usually for having spent our money unwisely in very large amounts. And they've actually been relatively quiet lately. I suspect they've been relatively quiet because they haven't been doing anything particularly useful. But clearly, they obviously have a knack of getting memorandums of understanding, like the one between Citybeng and Youth Development Agency, because the percentage of the middleman take is huge. But that's what the Youth Development Agency does. And what I have a very cynical take on youth. Cynical in the sense that they think they know what they want, and we don't know what it is they need. Frankly, the youth don't know what they need, and that's where the adults come into the room, is to provide what they need. So I actually think a youth development agency particularly playing with those sorts of money is pretty much not needed. Its existence is completely unnecessary.
Terence, what do you make of this? Just seems to be another story where there's just so obviously some kind of corruption or incompetence going on, and and it just seems blatant, like to a degree that it's a bit like the contract that Ace Makashule got in trouble for, which was, I think, a 20 million rand contract to do 1 million rand's worth of work that didn't get done.
I think it was 200 million.
200, sorry, yes. You see, I couldn't even remember.
It's just money. It's just money. Yeah, the National Youth Property Development Agency. Yeah, you know, if they're spending 2.6 million on a home, I imagine that property prices are going to be escalating in that area at a rate of knots. So I'm sure that the good burgers there will be happy with it. Is anyone surprised? Actually, you know, this is not a build your mansion. Thank you. If I can get the National Youth Property Development Agency to give me 2.6 million, you can come and remodel my place. Yeah, this has been something that happens on and off. Remember the EFF built a house in Nkandla, you know, to show how dreadful the fire pool property was, or the swimming pool, or whatever. And apparently it turned out the person that built it for was actually employed by the government, and the structure wasn't that great anyway. Yeah. No, it's beyond parody. But the Youth Development Agency was created, to my view, and I don't think there's anyone who's really going to contradict me on this, as a toy for the ANC Youth League back in the sort of early Zuma administration. The first CEO, if I remember, was who's the chap of the glass jug assault fame?
Lungisa.
Yes, right. Yeah, he was in charge for a while, and you know, they had the World Festival of Youth and Students. Now, the ideologically dreadful event. There is actually some footage on YouTube of previous ones. You know, back in the 1970s when it was hosted in East Berlin. At least they took it seriously. You know, it seemed to be well organized, and they had, you know, bands that actually turned up for their performances to denounce West German capitalism and whatever. I mean, this thing, you know, I've heard. I know somebody had a friend who attended. He said the breakfast they were given was a sort of no-name fruit juice and a packet of, you know, very scaly chips. That, yeah. Whether something like this could be a useful institution, I'm not sure, but this one certainly isn't. So it's just one of these things. Yeah, you know, why is anyone surprised?
And I think once again it reveals the sort of extent of our governance problems. So we've got all these laws like the Municipal Financial Management Acts, which are supposed to properly account for the spending of any money. And here we have 2.6 million rands worth of taxpayers' money being very, very obviously spent badly. This being known at some point to government. I mean, they have the records of it, right? It's not like it had to be found out through some deep investigation. All that happened was the DA MPL here just asked a question of the MEC of Cooperative Governance in the province, and this was the answer he got, right? They went and just looked and checked their records, but no one had bothered to raise this issue within the ANC. No one had bothered to raise this issue in the local government and say, hey, why did we spend so much money on... No, it's just kind of like, oh, well, I guess that's how much we spent on it. And until there's some proper accountability,
yeah,
it's not going to make a single difference.
I think the one of the explanations may be that this sort of thing is just so much par for the course that you know, why should it ring any bells?
Right. Sara, any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, no, I was about to say pretty much the same thing. And what I think it does illustrate is we have reached such a stage that we expect it. The perpetrators know we expect it. They're not likely to be consequences, other than the fact that they'll probably not be able to ask for more money to finish off the house and repair the cracks. And that's the state to which we've got. It's like, well, it must be Tuesday.
And I want to make one sort of final point here that sounds perhaps a little bit grand, but bear with me. And this is the first time of 2 times that I'm going to shill for a video we put out yesterday or on late Tuesday evening, which where our colleague Gabriel Krauser went around and interviewed some people around South Africa about unemployment and Freedom Day and what Freedom Day means to them as people who are searching for jobs. And the thing that struck me about, especially the last guy interviewed in that video, so do go check it out, it is on the Daily Friends YouTube page, is just the level of cynicism. Gabriel asked him, did you vote? And he said, what's the point? No, it's all just, government's always just going to betray us. There's no point reporting. He also got assaulted. And he said, what's the point of reporting it to the police? No one's going to do anything. And I think this is actually a really big problem in South Africa, is that the level of cynicism and just kind of despair has grown to such a level that South Africans are actually making it easier to be taken advantage of because they just don't expect any better from government.
Look, if I may, some years ago, a family member of mine had a handbag stolen, smash and grab. We went to report it, and the officer said to a very nice lady, he said, "Are you just here for the insurance, or do you want to investigate it?" So we said, investigation, why not? About sort of a couple of months later, somebody it was just outside Wits. There's a little stream that flows. This is apparently happening again and again, and some irate motorist, went down there to check and found this haul of handbags lying under there. I think the wallets and things have been taken out, but you could at least find the handbag.
Right.
If you do any of the investigation, that was an optional extra.
Right.
Apparently not done.
So, I think the lesson here from this is actually we do need to demand better, and we do need to keep complaining because we do deserve better. But anyway, let us move on from this to talk about, we've talked about the Youth League in a sense, or the Youth League's official government body. And now we're going to talk about the ANC Women's League, an organization that has, shall we say, not had a great time of late. Its leadership has been in trouble recently. And the latest is that the ANC's National Executive Committee, which is basically its top body, and it has decided that the term of office of the ANC Women's League has expired, that it's not properly constituted at the moment. So they are going to be disbanding the ANC Women's League's leadership and appointing a national task team. This is according to Treasurer General Paul Mashatile. He said that there was unanimity on the need to ensure the legitimacy of processes leading up to the national conference of the ANC Women's League. Accordingly, the NEC decided that the ANC Women's League executive should be disbanded. So there's apparently a report from another task team which said that there were lots of problems regarding the ANC Women's League, including the fact that, like the ANC itself, it's out of money. The ANC Women's League blamed the mother party for the state of its finances, saying that it hadn't been given a lot of support. It was also criticized for having poor organizational structures and just, as the government loves this word, challenges at all levels. So there's sort of 2 questions here. Sara, I'm going to start with you. Firstly, what do you make of this? It seems, so the Women's League supplies a lot of voting delegates to the ANC's internal conferences, which is why it's kind of important to control. And I believe it's tended to back the anti-Cyril Ramaphosa side of most arguments. So I struggle to see at least, not a little bit of Ramaphosa maybe being quite happy with this disbandment, perhaps hoping to reconstitute an ANC Women's League, which is more favorable to him. But the broader question of, a lot of political parties have copied the ANC in creating their own women's league or women's network or whatever. Do we need them?
No. Judging by experience, particularly from the very public Women's League, is that they may be, I know they've been supportive of women who've ended up in court over abuse and similar tragedies, but that's got a kind of that's actually very sweet at a local level, but it doesn't, that's not what a women's league should be there for. It should be to really stand up for women and get things done. And I haven't had the impression for years that the Women's League cares. I mean, my sense is, and I think when, that's just sort of symbolized by Tabile Dlamini being I think the last chair but one of the league, is they're underwhelming. The intellectual heft is not there. The fact that they support Zuma kind of fascinates me. I mean, I'm thinking, is it really harking back to an old patriarchal relationship, or is there something sort of financially in it, or what would it be? But let's put it this way: the Women's League of 4 or 5 decades ago might have been really something to reckon with intellectually and with as far as courage goes. But like the rest of the ANC, it's a reflection of the lack of intellectuals. It's a failure. It's a reflection of the fact of people who don't have the organizational skills or the wherewithal to really go and do anything. I mean, I'm fairly skeptical about having women's anythings like, I mean, this the whole Department of Women, Children and Disabled. It's more patronizing. I don't think it comes. If you need to bat for women, you need to bat for them in the environment in which men are treating them badly, whether it be as government ministers or members of parliament. There's misogynistic behavior happening. Then women can stand together and fight. But this to me is just absolutely flim-flam. And I think the ANC has had the Women's League it deserves.
Terence, what do you make of, I mean, so the idea of a women's league in general? A lot of parties have them. Do you have anything to add to what Sara said? Do you think that we need them? The same as like a youth organization. I think it's the same question.
I mean, I tend to, I think, be a little more sympathetic to the idea. I think it depends on the on your party strategy for outreach. And I mean, as one said, someone living in Sandton, who works as a senior manager in a finance house and happens to be a woman, probably doesn't need a women's organization. Somebody who suffers from domestic violence or is dependent on an abusive relationship or whatever, that's a very different life experience. But I think that if you're going to have it and it's going to mean anything, it has to be properly capacitated, and that means both having the resources to initiate its own activities and its own programs, but also to have people within it who actually are willing to push those. Now, I think one of the big problems with a large organization that is these sort of sub-directorates is that each of them provides a little power block for you to get your salary and your position and whatever, and
and it creates a patronage network.
The train of accountability looks upwards rather than downwards. The ANC Women's League has not, shall we say, been a stranger to controversy before. When Miss Madikizela Mandela was the head honcho there. But then again, she was a formidable woman. Whatever one may have thought of her, she was taken seriously. I mean, Tony Leon's biography is a whole chapter devoted to tangling with the lady. So yes, I mean, I'd like to throw out a challenge to those watching who are, I think, are politically aware people. Who's the head of the ANC Women's League now? Do we know? Do we care? But interesting thing, you mentioned the youth league. The youth league's been in this kind of like under receivership or whatever phrase they use, with task team and a crisis committee and whatever since I think 2018. They haven't had a leader since Collins Maile. Yeah,
Collins Shabani. No, Maile. I can't remember one. Collins
Maine, I think. But once again, who? Say what you want about Julius Malema. He had charisma. He had a profile. The guy who followed him, whose name we are struggling to come up with, his nickname by him was Oros because he looked like the Oros man.
Yes,
And apparently he received an honorable mention in some of those Bell Pottinger communiques. So no, okay, so is a women's or a youth league of value? Well, I don't know. I'm just not sure this one is.
I remember from my time in the DA that I didn't think too much of the DA equivalents of those organizations. They never seem to do much, and I don't know. I think it opens the door to a kind of silly identity politics where you just focus on representation all the time, and that's exactly the same thing that we complain about as one of the things that's really hurt South Africa's political culture. Anyway, Sara, any final thoughts?
No, just that there is a role that dedicated sort of senior women in the ANC or any other party could really do. Like, one is really getting to grips with the issue of abuse and attitudes towards women, but that's about being prepared to come forward and look at issues that generally are not looked at. In dealing with this issue, we have the same issues being dealt with over and over again: policing, resources, etc., etc. And it's much more refined than that. And you need people with a reputation and dignity to take these issues on, and they don't take them on. Any of those issues, they certainly, I think, for a lot of women, they would be absolutely the way to go. But you haven't seen them take it. Even someone like Winnie Mandela, who she was formidable, and I wouldn't have liked to have come across her in a dark alley either. But whether actually anything happened as a result, I'm not entirely sure.
All right, so let's move on to our last topic today, and we're going to be talking about a new draft policy which the City of Johannesburg is going to be implementing with regards to controlling informal traders. So basically hawkers, people selling goods on the side of the road. And just more broadly about the issue of informal trading. So I once again recommend that everyone go and check out Gabriel's video from yesterday, where one of the people he interviewed was actually a woman who is an informal trader. So the new draft policy the City of Joburg has put out, I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think the MMC responsible for the department that covers informal trading is an Action SA guy. And the sort of the policy, I think, was a bit of a collaboration between the various coalition partners. Anyway, some of the ideas here are that there's going to be much more control over informal trading, that it's going to be, I think it was described by the MMC as cleaning up the informal trading sector. There's going to be cooperation with the Departments of Labor and Home Affairs to ensure that everyone who's applying for an informal trader's permit is legally here in the country. And I must say, I do feel a little bit skeptical of this. I think there's two aspects to this. One is how informal traders are actually treated by the Metro, for example, who often, enormous numbers of stories of the Metro cops who are supposed to, when they confiscate an illegal informal trader's goods, carefully put them aside, impound them, and then release them for a fee. I've heard many stories where those just get stolen or the informal traders get beaten up. And then there's also the sort of broader question of, is more regulation of informal trading the solution? If you're forcing people, even legal foreigners, to have to go through a process where Home Affairs is going to check their documents or the Department of Labor is going to check their documents, that just seems to me like we're kind of strangling business at the smallest level here. Because, as we know, those government departments are not, shall we say, speedy. So I can very well imagine a legal foreigner applying for a permit to trade and then, having to wait 3 months for that to happen, for that to be approved. And that's a real big problem. A lot of these informal traders make just a couple R100 maybe a day. And that's revenue, not profit. They walk away with very little money at the end of the day. I don't know. So it's quite a big issue. Terence, what do you think the policy should be on informal trading in our cities?
Look, it's not an entirely simple one. There are issues around grey goods and people lacking the right to work in the country legally and that sort of thing. The immigration question. But the informal sector is throughout Africa a means by which people survive. And I can't help seeing here a train of very sad and sinister interventions or proposed interventions, which reached a sort of high point in 2013 with a measure from the Department of Trade and Industry, which never actually went through, but would have required a permit to do any kind of trading. And I mean, I put this in writing. This kind of means that if your church is selling, crumpets after the Sunday morning service, someone could, a metro cop could come and shake you up for the enormous offense of selling those crumpets. Informal traders are harassed, subjected to bribery. They do not have an easy time of it. I think, though, that this taps into the sort of, you want to call it xenophobia, you want to give some other name to it, I don't care. That's that sort of thing, that we can identify people who are a problem. And I think this idea of registering them and making them go through Home Affairs will be essentially the process of cancelling foreign traders from that environment. There's been suggestions about, for instance, limiting township businesses to South African nationals, and I think this is a sort of natural extension of that. That being said, issues like littering, like pavement congestion are real. I'm not sure that this kind of pre-approving permits is the way to go.
Sara, what do you make of this?
I'm a little skeptical too, because it's such business on a small scale that to require permits is just, I think, just too bureaucratic. Certainly have some rules perhaps about the distance between where people may sit, issues about giving them support in exchange for things like littering, clearing up litter, etc., etc. But we're a desperate society, and people need to make a living any way they can, given the level of unemployment. And by and large, I mean, obviously it depends; it's from area to area. But by and large, a large number of people just about keep body and soul together with these sort of small businesses of selling things or repairing things or whatever they might be. So, and some of the guys are quite skilled and could do more, but the economy is so very, very desperate. So anything that smacks of a sort of permit system, anything other than just a few rules and some sort of support in exchange for perhaps holding a position, in other words, littering, tidying up litter, etc., and that place is yours. I mean, literally speaking, beggars can't be choosers, and I think it's unconscionable, because essentially, if people are going to have to be small traders in order to live, if the police do anything untoward towards them, or there's too much red tape, they stop trading, they'll pick up somewhere else. They have to. It's just a given.
Right.
So I think it's like, it's like using a brickbat to swat to swat a fly or a flea. It's just the wrong thing.
Yeah, obviously there's some arguments in favor of licensing informal traders. You can cut up like the side of roads and cause various sort of problems with infrastructure and that kind of stuff. But I must say, when faced with the economic conditions that we are in South Africa rather, I'm rather partial to the idea that for example, main roads through cities should pretty much have close to a free-for-all, at least when it comes to informal traders, because otherwise you just get this opportunity for state officials to abuse people, which until last. Go ahead, Terence.
Look, there's something else that where it comes to people's livelihoods, especially in a soft state, in a sort of soft state system like South Africa, there's a limit to what you're actually going to achieve. And I'm reminded of something which might amuse our viewers. In the 1990s, there was a talk show hosted by Felicia Mabuza Suttle, if anyone remembers that. Dreadful, but anyway. And one was about prostitution. And there was this guy who was saying, no, what we need is establish a red light district. He was going to be in Hillbrow. And when people stood up from the audience, because on the panel there was this very high-class courtesan, he said, look, but she doesn't want to work in Hillbrow. She wants to work in Houghton, and that's where she's going to work. And I think it's very much the same with walking. And unfortunately, what you do find in very divided cities is that upmarket areas want to sort of push this into the downmarket parts, and it's like trying to empty the ocean with a spoon.
Yeah, right. It's this confluence of people who don't want it in their backyard because they're worried it's going to affect their property values, with sort of people who are worried about informal traders having too many foreigners, and with state officials seeking to extract sort of bribes. And these are three corners of the triangle that produce a policy like this. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. We will, of course, be back next week, not on Monday, because Monday is not Workers' Day, but it's Workers' Day held over, which is on Sunday. So we hope you enjoy the long weekend. Unfortunately, it's the last public holiday we have for a while, so we have to go through the long stretch of winter without the
worse than I thought.
But anyway, have a good one, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Friend Show. Cheers, everyone.